Welcome to Dialogues in Afro-Latinidad, a podcast dedicated to amplifying and elevating Afro-Latinx histories, cultures, and communities across the Americas and beyond. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Vasquez. Join us for conversations with experts and artists to learn more about Afro-Latinidad. Venga. Hi, my guest today is Meli Machado. She is a cultural storyteller, an experienced curator, born and raised in Panama City, Panama. With a background in hospitality management and a passion for travel, she creates meaningful experiences rooted in Afro-Panamanian heritage. After leaving her corporate career, she founded With Meli, a cultural tourism brand connecting locals and visitors through curated talks, walking tours, and immersive encounters that encourage learning and reflection and authentic exchange while celebrating Panama's diverse history, identity, and traditions. Welcome, Meli, to our podcast. I'm so glad you could join me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle, for the intro. And it's an honor for me to be today here with you and to share more about Afro-Panamanian history and our culture.
Absolutely. So tell me about how you became interested in exploring and enhancing the visibility and experiences of Black Panamanians and perhaps even Afro-Latin Americans more broadly.
Sure. Well, everything started in 2024, as you were mentioning before in the intro. 2024 was a very important year in my professional life, career wise. I lost my job that year. So after that, honestly, for me, it was like, well, I had been working for that company like for 10 years when it happened. For me, it was an opportunity to do many things that I wanted to do, but I was so immersed into the job and all of that. So first thing I did was travel for a month. I was like, finally, I can.
Beautiful.
I love traveling. So I used to travel for work as well, but this was an opportunity for a new start. So I always saw it in a positive way, honestly. I went to Europe for the first time. And one of the countries that I visited really, changed my perspective. I'm not going to say change my perspective, but open my perspective in terms of our history. So I went to Portugal. I did a tour called Afro-Lisbon tour. So I have always been very connected to my Afro-Panamanian culture and everything, but honestly, I had never experienced something that would open my eyes to the African diaspora and our history in different countries. So after that tour, honestly, and after the rest of my trip to Europe, which was wonderful, I enjoyed very much. I came back to Panama and I started this personal journey of connecting more with my roots, also with my family history. I started reading books, watching different documentaries, also connecting more with people in the community, and also conversations like with my mom, stuff that I had never asked before. So it was a personal journey at the moment. Honestly, I didn't plan on sharing this, in a professional level, like opening a
Mhm.
business or something like that. But at the same time, as I was mentioning, I was in this career transition and I wasn't
Right.
sure what I wanted for my next professional step. So little by little, everything started connecting because I made the decision that I didn't want to go back to the corporate world. I
Mm.
wanted to have a business, open a business, start something meaningful, something that connected more with my passion, And as I was in this personal journey and I was feeling that connection, I was like, I want to take this to the next level. So at the moment, I was also seeing that definitely Panama is a multicultural country, but I wasn't seeing much of my Afro-Panamanian, my
Mm.
history, my culture out there, for people that visit and even for Panamanians too. So that's when I started my mission of, let me create an experience that can really connect with who we are as Afro Panamanians, our history, our culture. And from there, everything it's just flowing since I started this mission 10 months ago.
Well, I'm just blown away. I'll just say I was on one of your tours during my first visit to Panama. I can't believe it was that just happened this year. I was like just kicking myself for having not come before. And I was but I was determined. I was like, I want to know about Afro-Panamanian culture and history. And sure enough, that was the name of your tour. And I just remember you talking about those conversations with your family. So could you say a little bit about your family's background in Panama?
Sure, sure. So from my father's side, my grandmother, she was born in Jamaica. So that was exactly the same year when the Panama Canal construction started. So I'm sure that my great grandparents, were connected directly or indirectly to the canal construction. And then from my mother's side, my great grandmother, she was born in St. Lucia. So same thing, looking at the dates, most likely was connected to that period of time here in Panama. But my background, it's mainly, let's say, Afro-Caribbean. And I basically grew up in an Afro-Caribbean household. Like I remember my grandma didn't speak, honestly, that much. She did speak Spanish, but she preferred English. So that's a little bit of it. I'm still, putting the puzzle together in many other aspects, to trace it back a little bit further, like trying to find some records of information about, great grandparents and all of that. But yeah, that's what I can share for now in terms of my family history.
Yeah, that's great. I want to also ask about some other defining moments. So you came back from Portugal, really excited, learning more about Panama. But what was I guess, in that journey, what were some defining moments that really made you say, I need to found, establish Go Meli, sorry, with Meli, and were there some kind of moments or indicators along that path where you said, I'm doing the right thing?
Okay, so definitely several defining moments throughout the journey, but I feel that the main one was actually my first tour because I was reading so much and, I was very nervous as well because I was like, okay, I started this journey a few months ago of studying deeply about our history and all of that. But, realizing like, okay, you have to set a launch date. Like I had the experience created as well, but I was still like pushing it further. Like maybe I should read another book and this and that and the other. I was nervous about maybe the questions because it's like more than 500 years of
Yeah,
history.
yeah,
There's a lot there.
yeah.
So my defining moment was when I just decided like this is the day that I'm doing it. And my first group was actually with friends and friends of friends. So I
Yes.
knew some people in the group, but I some other people I didn't know at the moment. And after that first tour, I felt so like this energy, this like, okay, I got it. Like this is what we're going to be doing. I love it. Like I was nervous before, but once I started talking about our history, I was just like, whoa, like literally, it just went by very naturally. And also something that I realized is that you never stop learning. So
Hmm.
that was part of what made me just set a date and do it. Because if I just waited to learn more and more and more, then I was never going to start. And the tour has evolved since I started July of last year to now. It has evolved because I have continued to learn, and I also learn from people that join the tours because there are questions that sometimes I do not have the answer, and I'm very honest, I don't have the answer to this, but I'm going to find out. So then
Yes.
I integrate that to the following experiences and so on. So it has been a beautiful journey. I would say like that's the number one a defining moment. And then a second one would be last year in November, I had the opportunity to participate in a Black Travel Summit. It was in Rio de
Uh,
Janeiro in Brazil. So for me, it was a defining moment too, because just being there with it was more than 300 people within the travel industry in their own areas of expertise. There were some creators, influencers, travel agencies, people that own their businesses, and also even travelers. So being in that environment, just living our culture, just
yeah,
enjoying us, it was amazing. That also made me feel like this is definitely where I want to be, where I need to be, where I want to grow. Um, so yeah, those two I would say so far. I mean, it has been 10 months, so I'm sure that more defining moments are going to come as I continue to develop the business. But for now, those are the two main ones.
that's those are wonderful. I'm so glad that you were able to just, well, they would just set the tone of, yes, this is. absolutely, definitively what you should be doing. And so I know you're really passionate about creating these experiences. And so how does that show up in other areas of the work? Like I know you mentioned refining the your presentation based on the kinds of questions from previous tours, but what other things inform the way that you curate this experience?
Okay, so basically, in the way I like to create experiences that bring our culture to life, right? So when I think about immersive experiences, I want to mix our history, but with, art, music, dance, everything that represents us. So apart from the walking tour that you were able to experience, a part of my mission in terms of creating this immersive experiences is being this bridge with other people in the community that are also hosting, something connected to the Afro-Panamanian culture. And in that way, because I believe in that collaboration, that unity spirit among our community, then we can create something that is not only like, oh, with Meli and that's it, but our culture goes beyond that and we can create amazing things. So I'm very passionate about, structuring the entire experience and for it to be also people to be involved, people to be part of it, not for it just to be like, oh, something that I saw over there or over here, but something that I truly experience. And basically for people to live any experience, as I was mentioning, through all the different, branches, that could be like for people to live with that sense of pride, identity of our culture and the connection that we have among the African diaspora as well.
Yeah, you're reminding me of a couple of those experiences on the tour that, at least on our tour, for one was the dancers, and I've been on many, I guess, in many spaces where there are dancers, but I felt like that one. I think normally the dancers are here, and I'm afuera, so the audience doesn't get to interact with them. But because there were just maybe because there was just the two of them, and they did interact with us very readily. And I just remember I was fascinated by the one of the woman's movements, and I was like, there's something happening. Like she's telling a story, and I need to know
Exactly.
what's going on. And so that's why I came over and was in my crazy Spanish, but I was like, I understand 100%
Yes.
what you are saying. But and also there was this wonderful story about because I'm a historian, so about the food, the red sweet plantain
Yes, the
empanada,
plantain tarts, better known as
plantain tart.
plantain
Yes,
tas in Panama.
plantain tarts. Yes, yes. Could you say a little bit about that story
Yeah,
that you
sure,
shared with us?
sure. So, as I was mentioning, with bringing flavors into the experience is for us not only to, taste something delicious, but also to understand the history behind it. So, that's why I bring flavors to the experience as well. So, plantain tart or plantintas, I was saying, we like to cut words here in Panama. So, plantain tart
Está
felt
bien.
like too long. So, we were like, okay, let's just call it plantinta. So, it's basically a it's an empanada that is filled with sweet plantain, and on the inside it's red. So that connects directly to our Afro-Caribbean heritage. There are, several theories about why it's red. Some people would say it's still a mystery. Some other people, for example, from the bakery that I normally buy my plantintas from, the owner, Stanley Record, told me that basically, we got a lot of Jamaican migration during the canal construction. Patties are very common in Jamaica. So here in Panama, sometimes meat was not accessible, and then they would fill it with sweet plantain, and it was used also for desserts for kids, for kids to have a little sweet. And
Mhm,
then and basically the color, the red color, they would use natural seeds to make it red, and it was a way of disguising what they were eating, because at the time, even though, I mean, there was like certain limitations into what the Afro-Caribbean here in Panama could have access or not to. So
mhm,
that's one of the theories, but as I
mhm,
mentioned, there are several theories.
mhm,
Someone
mhm,
traced back even further, before the coming to Panama with the Jamaican migrations, etc. But that's one short story about the
Mhm.
mystery of the plantintas in Panama.
Yeah, no, I love that kind of connection that everything around us, we don't often things that we don't often think about. I think constantly about food, so that could
Me
be just
too.
me. But I think that was I get. But I remember the people around other people on the tour. They were like it just seemed like, oh, the food has a history too. I'm like,
Exactly.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to get a little bit into as a tour creator. So obviously, you've talked a lot about what you love about doing it, but what's been challenging about doing this work?
Okay, so one of my main challenges, I mean, when I started this, I was, as I mentioned before, I was studying a lot. I was connecting this, preparing and curating the experience. But at the moment, I didn't think about the back office part of it. Like when
Yeah.
you own a business, there are a lot of other things that you have to do in terms of marketing, in terms of digital presence, with the social
Mhm.
media, in terms of accounting, in terms of different collaborations, meetings, getting people to know you, networking. So I personally host the experiences, but once it's over, I get home and then I have to do all the back office work, also answering all the emails, the WhatsApps, the Instagram messages. So luckily, and I'm very grateful that I have had a very high demand since I started this, but high demand also means like a lot of work on that
Yes.
back office. So
Yeah.
it has been challenging. But at the same time, because it's just me, and then the day has 24 hours. But I was
Mhm.
going to mention that throughout my journey, I have also connected with people that are easing, that workload. For example, at the beginning, I did different like virtual classes of how to create content on Instagram. I did it. I have a long list of different things that I did to prepare myself beyond the part of studying our history and our culture. But then one day I was like, Meli, you don't have to do everything by yourself. So I started
Exactly.
connecting with people because people that had expertise in certain areas that I was trying to learn. But honestly, I'm not an expert editing reels or anything like that. Honestly, before this, my like social media presence was very limited. I would post only when I was traveling, and that's it. So now I have definitely a team on the backstage that help me with certain things. I still have a lot that I do by myself for now, but little by little, I'm creating that structure, that system that is going to ease the back office load as well, for me to focus more on the creation aspect of it, because I do want to create other experiences too. As I mentioned, I love to create, so I want, now that this one is running and people have loved it, I do want to create other experiences within the Afro-Panamanian culture umbrella. So work in progress there.
Okay, so can you give us any hints about what that might be, or you want to just leave that until it's more developed?
Well, it's basically you know different. What I create always is something that is a little bit out of the box. For example, here in Panama, there's no tour or experience that connects with Afro-Panamanians entrepreneurs, like what they're doing, connect with their stories. So one of the experiences that I want to build is to create a route where we're going to visit different Black-owned businesses and know their story,
Yes, I love
and
that.
then connected as well with a little bit of tasting, with a little bit of shopping and things like that, but basically connecting with that Afro-Panamanian community of business owners, entrepreneurs. I feel that that would be something different to experience. And a lot of my ideas is also from questions that people might ask during the tour. So where do I find Black people in Panama? What are Black people doing in Panama? This and that and the other. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I can create something, because I have connected with a lot of Afro-Panamanian entrepreneurs, and it would be lovely for people that visit to have that experience as well of connecting with them.
I love that. You let me know when I will be back. I will be there.
Yay! And beyond that, also, it's basically I'm creating the Afro Panama experience, where you can blend. You already experienced the walking tour, but I want to have like an itinerary that can be curated depending on the needs of the guests. if they like dancing, if they like art, if they like drumming classes, like different immersive experiences that can be part of a full itinerary to experience Afro-Panamanian culture. Like it does it cooking classes as well. So the things that I'm mentioning, I'm not going to be hosting all of those by
Right.
myself because, but precisely what I was saying before, like being that bridge to people in the community that are already doing these experiences. But the thing is that when people come to Panama, sometimes they meet me, but then they don't know that we also have this and that and the other. So under that the Afro-Panama experience is to make accessible for people that visit and not to be having to look in five different platforms to see how
Mhm.
to connect with the Afro-Panamanian culture. I want to be like that bridge, and that would support our community as well. So yeah, that's a little bit of what's coming. So it's not only going to be with Meli, it's going to be the Afro-Panama experience, and then uh, from there we're going to
Yeah,
create
that,
all of
like I said,
it.
sign me up for all of it. I love it. I love it. So I know you're doing a lot of work in the community in Panama. You talked about some of your experiences outside in Brazil as in particular. And so I'm just wondering, as a tour creator and operator, how does what you're doing help us understand transnational Blackness in Panama or in other parts of Afro-Latin America? Do you think about it? Wondering if any of your conversations at that conference of tour directors looked at any of those kinds of transnational connections.
Yeah, sure. And even with what I do right here in Panama, when I start the experience, I always talk about the origin of the African diaspora in the Americas. Like, I don't get directly into, okay, let's talk about Afro-Panamanian history because we need to understand this connection, how it all connects within the African diaspora. So even I speak about people from other countries like heroes that we have had throughout our history, and people feel really connected because a lot of times when I'm saying something, it would be like, oh, that reminds me of something back home, or that reminds me of something of a Caribbean island that I visit. So part of the values that I have within all of my experiences is to seek for that connection. Like, how are we connected? um, and also, I mean, like, if we trace it back even further, like the root is the same. So how not talk about Africa when we're talking about Afro-Panamanian culture? Through the different aspects that I mentioned, we find this connection with the story behind the food, the story behind the arts. So it goes beyond Panama. Afro-Panamanian history is not like isolated from the rest, especially Panama, considering that we have been basically crossroads in terms of, we know the Panama Canal, but even before the Panama Canal, Panama has always played a key role due to our geographic location. So through Panama, a lot of people have come. And we can experience like that diversity as well within the Afro-Panamanian community. Speaking specifically about Panama, we have like these two main African diaspora waves: the Afro-colonials, they were the first ones, the enslaved Africans that were forced to the Americas and specifically to Panama, and then we have the Afro-Caribbean migration. So
Mhm.
all of that connects to the big umbrella of the African diaspora in general, not only in Panama.
Yes, yes, thank you. I also want to talk a little bit about, I'm not sure in what ways you might encounter it in your work, but what do you think are some of the most urgent issues that you perhaps consider in the work that you do in curating these experiences about Afro-Panamanians in your work? What do you see as kind of really critical that people either don't know enough about or that needs to have more visibility?
Sure, sure. So I think the key is education.
Mm,
And I feel that we have work in progress there because a lot of the things that I share in my tours is not something that we learn when we're in school.
mm,
I often remember like my little cousin, she's 12 now, and I have asked her like, so Angie, what are you learning nowadays in school, this and that and the other? And it's the same narrative, the same thing, which is not inclusive to our culture. So I feel that through education we can get, you know communities to get more involved, more connected. That's a key part, and also visibility within the Latin American umbrella, to say so, because a lot of people have this concept of what is Latino, or Latino is a race, and that's a whole full subject. But we need to acknowledge the African roots within that umbrella of Latinidad, as it's known by some. So through education and visibility and involving the younger generations, I feel that we would, aim to a more inclusive world, and we would understand many things that are still. I often use the term, we need to decolonize our minds as well, because we need to unlearn and relearn a lot of aspects of our history. So honestly, if the education system of many of our countries, I'm sure it's not only in Panama, or not including that, then we have to do the work as well from the outside, from our own areas of expertise. Or, like I always encourage guests that participate in my tours, like to share the information that they learn with their family, with their kids, with their grandkids, with their sisters when they got back home, because we have to be like these agents of change, um, through education. For me, education is the key. And little by little, the more that people are aware and educated about our history, about our culture, about who we are, and the role that we have played throughout
Hmm.
history, because some people just want to associate us to slavery, and our
Yes.
history is beyond that. So yeah, basically, I would say that would be like my, you know plan of action in terms of what we need right now: more education and visibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Well, we are unfortunately getting to the end of our time, and so, so I always like to ask everyone. So, in addition to all the work you're doing with with Meli and that project, and all the social media, what other kinds of resources and your website? What other kinds of resources would you recommend for people who want to know more about what you do, or what else is happening in that space in Panama, or about history, culture that you would recommend people to check out?
Sure. So when I think about Panama, I always recommend my first book. The first book that I read about Afro-Panamanian history is called People of African Ancestry in Panama. The author is a Panamanian. She's Melba Lowe de Gooden. And that book it was a short book. It wasn't too long, but it gave me, like that timeline of events that shape Panama when we think about like our Afro-Panamanian history and culture. And then from there, I was able to deep dive into certain aspects of it that I wanted to have more information, but that gave me even like the storyline for the experience that I host, right? And so I definitely recommend that book. Also, Afro Unidad, it's an organization. It's basically a cultural connection movement, also like a decolonization movement. And I feel that's very important, as I was mentioning previously. And I love how they connect the African diaspora through our art, through our food, music. So everything that I said that I was passionate about in terms of
Yeah.
creating the experiences, I have found that in Afro Unidad. So they have social media. They also have a book called Culture and Rebellion Across the African Diaspora. So it gives you like this perspective of us, who we are in different aspects, in terms of even languages, like different things that trace back to Africa and connects to what we have in the Americas, in the Caribbean, even in Europe. So I would recommend definitely connecting with Afro Unidad. I was going to say something in Spanish, a través, but
I mean,
but through social media, through their book, and they host events in different countries in the Caribbean. So if you follow them, then you will see where they have different events to get together, because I feel that's very important. We have to celebrate us, our culture, by getting together. Not only the Black History Months of the different countries. I'm saying that because it's Black History Month in Panama during May, and we have a lot of events, but we need more of those events throughout the year.
mhm, mhm,
So
mhm.
let me see. I follow several social media accounts that I love. One of those is Black Tina, and I have participated in several of her webinars. So when I was starting, when I was still, gathering all the information, I love how she shared history about us. And one more. So I did a Afro-Latin American certification from a Afro-Latin American Research Institute from Harvard University. So every year they open new programs. So it's a virtual program, and that gives you like a lot of information about, Afro Latin American in general. So it's a great program. So I would recommend that one as well. I'm almost sure that the next opening is for September of this year, and it's available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese, if I'm not mistaken. And well, I do have a long list because I have had
That's
different ways,
wonderful.
and I continue to learn as I mentioned. Like every day I connect, with something new and a new resource that I dive into and see what I can, learn from it. So yeah, those are ones, like the main ones that come to mind right now that I would recommend to people to connect with.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing your journey with us and all the wonderful curated experiences and what's inspired you. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us today.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and hear more episodes of Dialogues in Afro-Latinidad on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And go to michellereedvasquez.com to check out our episode resources and learn more about the Afro-Latinidad Studies Institute.